All right, Algebra 1B students. Welcome to part 1 of lesson 12.4. We're going to talk in this video about a couple more numbers that we can use to find or to describe a certain data set, or in fact a certain data value when we get down to our second vocabulary word. But we're going to start by talking about what are called the first and third quartiles. Okay, these are related to the median, so we're going to start our process exactly the same way we do when we want to find a median. So suppose we have this data set here, 125, 80, 140, 135, 126, 140, 350, 75. The first thing that I want to do to find these two quartiles, first and third quartile, is actually find the median. Now, I believe we all know how to do that. We just order the data points from lowest to highest, and then start crossing things out from low to high and high to low, and eventually we end up in the middle. And here we have 126 and 35 in the middle. So to find the median, remember when we have 2 points in the middle that we can't cancel out because then there will be nothing left, we take those 2 points, add them together, and then divide that answer by 2. So we do 126 plus 135. We then divide all of that by 2. Whoa, big 2. And we end up with 130.5 as our median here. Okay, so 130.5 is our median. That ends up actually being right here in the middle of 126 and 135. So I'm going to put a break there at my median. Okay. Now sometimes we'll notice when we do our next example that we will actually cross out our median term, but here, since our median is not actually a data point, we don't cross it out. We just kind of split our data set on that median. Okay. Now the first quartile is essentially the median of the smaller half of this data. Okay, so we go from our median and we just look at the smaller half of our data, which in this case is 75, 80, 125, and 126. And then I go through my median process again with just that smaller half. So I go 75 is gone, 126 is gone, and already I have just these 2 points here in the middle, 80 and 125. And now I want to find the median or the average of those 2 points. So I will take 80 and I will add 125, and then I'll divide that by 2. And I end up with my my first quartile number being 102.5. Okay, so this is my first quartile. First quartile number is 102.5, which I found by just finding the median of that smaller half of my data set. Then I find the third quartile in a very similar fashion, except now I'm going to find the median of the bigger half of my data set. So now I'm not concerned with the smaller 75, 80, 125, 126. I'm concerned with the 135, 140, 140, 350. That's the top half of my data set, the higher 4 values here. And so I will just find the median by crossing out the lowest and highest, and I already have these 2 in the middle. The average of 140 and 140 very nicely for me is just 140. So my third quartile number is 140. Right? So once we find the median, we can then find the first quartile by finding the median of the lower half. We can find the third quartile by finding the median of the upper half of this data set. Okay? Let's try this process again with a different data set. just so we can see what happens when things are a little bit different in terms of finding our median, okay? If I have this data set, 2, 4, 5, 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, 21, 23, 25, the first thing I want to do again is find the median. So I'll start crossing things out. And I end up here with 11 as my median. Okay. Once I have my median, then to find the first quartile, I'm going to look at the lower half of my data set and find the median of that data set. But what we have to notice is that 11, if I were to split right on my median, the 11 gets basically crossed out here. So I'm not going to include the 11 in my lower half. I'm just going to go from 2 to 9. And then similarly, when I go to the upper half, I'm not going to include the 11. I'm just going to go from 12 to 25. Okay. Now, the first quartile is the median of this lower half, which if I cross out those numbers turns out to be 5. So the first quartile is 5. And then if I want to find the third quartile, I'll go to this upper half on the right, 12, 13, 21, 23, 25. Find the median there, cross, 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 and that is 21. So 21 is the third quartile. Okay, so when you have an odd number of data points where your median actually ends up being one of your data points, make sure that you do not include that when you go then to finding your quartiles. Okay, that gets eliminated, and we do not need to include that at all in our lower half and our upper half. Okay. If you have questions about how to find the quartiles, make sure you make a note to ask me in class tomorrow. But we're going to go on to one other vocabulary word that we need for a couple of our homework problems, which is percentile, which is loosely based on the first and third quartile and the median, but we won't really get into that in this class. But our definition of percentile is the percentage of data points that are less than or equal to a certain data point. Okay, so we'll talk about an individual data point's percentile. So let's say, we'll say the percentile of the 5 in this data set, or the percentile of the 12 in this data set. So percentile goes with one specific data point. For example, this is what your homework problems are going to look like on this. In a class of 25 students, 8 of them score less than or equal to 80% on a test. The question that you'll be asked to answer is, what is the percentile for that student or those students who scored exactly an 80%? So we're taking now this data point here, 80%, and we're trying to find the percent of the data points that are less than or equal to that data point. Now the problem told us that 8 of these 25 students scored less than or equal to 80%. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 25 to try to find my percentile. And when I do that, 8 divided by 25, I end up with 0.32. And then I times that by 100 to actually find my percentile. I'm not at the 0.32 percentile. I'm at the 32nd percentile. Okay? So we just take the number that's less than or equal to, and we divide by the total number of data points in that set. Okay, so we can find percentile for any data point we want in any data set ever. Okay, so be on the lookout for me asking for a certain percentile for 80% or for a 5 or for a certain data point. Okay. If you have any questions about first and third quartiles or how to find a percentile for a specific data point, please make a note to ask me in class tomorrow. Otherwise, that's all I have for you. Have a wonderful night.